everybody. It is Lee Milteer, and welcome to the Blonde Warrior Show here at Grassroots Network here on Rumble. First, I want to share some information that you need to know. There are links below, and we would love for you to help us spread the truth by donating to our channel, since we're 100% all donating our time to lift humanity up. Now, I do have a gift for you. It's very important. It's called the 5 Types of Energy. You can go to that at 5typesofenergy.com, and you will receive 5 different videos, one on mental, physical, emotional, spiritual, and financial energy. They're about 5 minutes each. They'll come a day apart. You can also visit my website, milteer.com, and check out all my books and resources. And I do have a brand new best-selling book called Activate Your Inner Power, and that's basically what we do here on this show. Now, we have today one of my favorite people of all time, Mr. Stephen Oliver, also known as Master Stephen Oliver. And we're going to discuss today business and politics and how they impact on one another. So I'm going to share some information about Master Oliver, who is in the martial arts business and the financial advisor's niche. So why he is so important is because he is sincerely in touch with not only a lot of smart people, but has his own fingers on the pulse of what is happening in the world with politics and business. Now, I want to give you a little deeper background so you understand him more. He worked his way through Georgetown University, earning an honor degree in international economics. Pretty impressive, huh? He also, at the same time, ran a martial arts school, which was a multi-million-dollar organization. Now, instead of directly going to graduate school like most people, he chose a different path. He, at that time, because of his knowledge, opened up 5 martial arts schools in his own in 18 months. And then just 6 more months later, 6 more schools in 36 months. Now, here's the really impressive part. He started with an investment of only 10 grand. So he completed an executive MBA while becoming a national event promoter. He is now internationally recognized as a marketing expert and speaker in those fields. Now, along the way, basically, he has ended up helping business owners really with all kinds of grassroots marketing, sales, internet marketing, and organizational management systems. He has written 8 books, basically all on management and marketing. And here's one of his books, Extraordinary Marketing for Financial Advisors. And this is a fabulous book if you get a chance to read it. He's also been a very successful speaker and very well known, and shared the stage with really big people in our world, such as Dan Kennedy, Brian Tracy, Jay Abraham, Tony Robbins, Chuck Norris, who I love, and a lot of other people such as me. Now, Stephen teaches his clients literally how to get new clients a lot easier with a lot stress by knowing exactly where they should focus their productive energy. So thank you for being with us today. And Stephen, welcome to Blonde Warrior. Nice to have you back.
Thank you, Lee. I'm neither blonde, but hopefully I'm a warrior. So
Oh, you're definitely.
we'll leave the blonde to you.
Well, yes, yes, I like that. Okay, so when we were playing with what we could talk about, because you and I could pretty much talk all day about a lot of things.
Two weeks probably.
Yes, you and I talk a lot about business and politics, and you really do have your fingers on pulses I don't have. So my real first question, it might be, and it's really the question for the whole interview today, is how are you personally seeing our current crazy town political situation is affecting business owners, and their potential clients and customers?
Well, it's interesting, and maybe to give it a little bit of a broader view. In my first book, it's called "Everything I Wish I Knew When I Was 22." I love that title, but I had 2 chapters. One is "It's never as bad as you think it is," and 2 is "It's never as good as you think it is." And I think it's always good to have a bit of a long-term perspective on things. Right now, frankly, the market is strange. That's the best word I can give it is it's strange. You have by a lot of objective measures, the economy has come back roaring after the debacle that we had of the virus. And then on the other hand is people don't really feel that way because inflation and their incomes have been hammered and in all kinds of different ways. So it's a very mixed, interesting, different the closest I can think of, and I'll only admit to it being me. I'm old enough to remember Jimmy Carter's era. Is I think of it as somewhat Jimmy Carter-ish, although not quite as out of control and crazy as it was back then. So it's very strange. It's with pretty much everybody I'm working with, they have a great flow of new customer base. They have if they're doing what I tell them to do and increasing revenue, one thing or another. On the other hand, their clients coming in the door are not sure the economy is good, not sure about their own future, not sure about their jobs, concerned about the evolution. So it's a strange double-edged sword of what's going on right now.
So whether I am walking the dog on the beach or I happen to be in a drugstore or my favorite hardware store, the number one thing people talk about is everything is so expensive.
Hmm.
And I'm so aware of how they're programming themselves to go into a fear-based reality by saying everything is so expensive.
Hmm.
And a number of years ago, with places you and I are well familiar with, organization that I did a lot of work with, they hired a new CEO. I can share her name was Deb, and Deb didn't know how to grow an organization other than cut expenses.
Hmm.
And so her entire focus was cut, 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 cut. And there is something to be said for getting rid of the fat. There's no question about that. That I think a lot of people sometimes don't even look at their credit cards, at some things that they have on there that they don't even know what it is.
Hmm.
But on the other hand, if you get into that mentality of that your whole way of surviving on earth is to cut, I do believe you cut off all your creativity to see new opportunities. You're not scanning the landscape looking for new opportunities because you're scanning the landscape of the world looking for what can you get rid of. And I think that's a very unhealthy perspective to be at. And yet, again, civilians, average folks who aren't really so much in business, I don't think they know a different way to look at life.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, there's two great ways to illustrate that, I think. If you went back and read all of the business magazines for 30 or 40 years, Forbes, Fortune, one thing or another, I'll throw Business Week in there sort of. But what you see when you start reading interviews of CEOs and one thing or another and tie it to a time period, when things are really good, I don't care whether it's Jack Welch or anybody since, they talk about how much bench strength they have of quality talent and that's the language they use. And when times are really tight, they talk about lean and mean and getting rid of the fat and cutting out middle management. Well, it's just a flip side. It's the black and white of the exact same syndrome. When things are abundant, they put pork on, they have too much, but the piece they brag about is, well, we have a bunch of bench strength. Well, maybe they have double the bench strength they need, triple the bench strength they need, but they have padded the business. And on the other side, when things get tight, they start cutting. And frankly, and this is a slightly different focus, but the place that the big dumb companies cut first is their marketing budget,
Yes.
which is the dumbest thing they can do, right? If it's harder to get a new client, you should probably work harder to get new clients rather than not trying. But I think that's just what you see back and forth is when things are flush, they brag about having bench strength, having talent come up, having too many people on the payroll. When things get tight, they talk about being lean and mean. And it's just the flip side of the same syndrome. Now, I think one of the best interesting business studies. I doubt if Harvard will do it, but I read a lot of the Harvard case studies for their MBA program. Is going to be the Twitter situation, right? What is Musk cut like 80% of the payroll, and they're adding features constantly, adding longer form video, adding community notes, one thing or the other. So they're adding stuff all the time with about 20% of the staff they had when he took over. As much as the rest of the tech world wanted to complain about that, they're all following suit, right? They all learned from his example.
I just saw the numbers. There was a huge list that was released about, all the Apples and, companies releasing thousands and thousands of people. Uh, so where are these people going? Because most of them are not what I call entrepreneur mindset capable.
Hmm.
They're very used to being a part of a puzzle that fits in somewhere else. And there are even entrepreneurs that are sort of like that, sort of have to hijack somebody else and hang on to their coattails to make it. But still, average people who've been ruined with thinking that the gold mine's never going to end,
Hmm.
uh, where are these people going to go?
Well, I think it's going to be interesting. What one aspect of them cutting people is they're cutting out all the DEI departments, and so I don't know where, hopefully nowhere, the people who majored in gender studies or whatever the hell they majored in. I think those people truly are going to be baristas for the balance of their life. They're going to be in some version of fast food, unless they get a clue quickly. I see a bunch of them at my local Starbucks, which seems to me what their likely background is, given the color of their hair and their multiple buttons on their apron. On the flip side, if you look at the economy right now, the problem that business is having, the problems that people I'm working with having, is hiring people,
Exactly.
and
This is
and
where I'm going.
yeah. Yeah, and so you have two problems right now. You have teenagers, young adults, especially male, don't want to work, aren't out there getting jobs. Parents are protecting them too much. So the entry level jobs like McDonald's, I mean the left wing approach is to raise minimum wage, and all that does is hasten automation, right? I mean, why would I hire somebody for $20 an hour if I can put an iPad up front to take the order, and it can say, "Do you want fries with that?" And I can automate the kitchen. On the other hand, the talented people. I mean, we have a real deficit of staff. Hire somebody who can hustle, who's willing to do marketing, who's willing to do sales. Hire somebody who's a good front line for the martial arts schools. Somebody who can be taught to be a good teacher. On the financial advisor side, they have a huge deficit. The big companies are spending a tremendous amount of time on college recruiting and losing 95% of the new people they get within a couple of years because they just all fail. And I blame the company more so than the people, because they just never teach them how to go find a new client. Uh, they basically want them to go hit up all their frat buddies, and then when they run out of people, they're out of the business.
Well, you brought up a subject about people protecting their kids too much.
Mhm.
A few years ago, before all the chaos, of I don't want to call it, I hate to give it actual names, but we all know what we're talking about. I was hiring for an executive assistant, and this woman who had just graduated to be a lawyer asked for the job. And when I entered, by the way, there were some slim pickings at the time.
Mhm.
So I actually,
Mhm.
when I got her, I thought I might have some little, goal for a short period
Mhm.
of time. And I kept saying to her, why would you want to come work for a publishing company when you've just worked so hard to become a lawyer? And she said, well, I'm just not ready to dip my feet into the lawyer world yet. I want to kind of get a feeling about business first. And I was willing to buy that. She only lasted 3 weeks.
Mhm.
When she called in one day to tell me that her father had died, And I'm so upset and so sorry for her until her mother called about an hour and a half later asking for her. And then I'm giving her the condolences about, her dead husband. And she goes, I have no idea what you're talking about. He's sitting right here having coffee with me. She just didn't want to come in anymore.
Mm,
And when I called her to say, hey, talk to your mom, your dad's
yeah.
not dead. What's up? And she said, working for you is too hard. Working for you is way too hard. And I'm like, specifically, what's so hard about it? Well, I have to be on time, and you're very, very clear about if I'm not on time, you are not happy. What are you, 11? Anyway, needless to say, I didn't give her a bonus of leaving. And she had the audacity to ask for a referral,
Hmm.
which I did laugh very hard and said, pretty much over my dead body, would I give you
Yeah.
a referral and sick you on somebody or other poor entrepreneur who's trying to hire you?
Yeah.
But I hear a lot of stories, maybe not as humorous as that one, but a lot of stories about people coming to work for very short periods of time and thinking it's all way too hard.
Do you remember my story on that one? I hired a young woman, and she was actually married to one of my branch managers. And I basically said, I need somebody, probably I have 15, 20 hours a week worth of work. I'll just hire you full time. Here's a laptop, here's a cell phone. You're working from home. And she lasted about a month, and then I didn't hear from her for a month, or at least a month. She never said she quit. She never just wouldn't answer her phone, wouldn't respond to emails. When I'd ask her husband what happened, is he'd say, "Oh, that's between you two." And I was like, "What the hell?" And it took me 6 months to get the laptop and the cell phone back. It was like she just disappeared, and didn't want to tell me that she disappeared, and disappeared with property. And best I could figure out was the same thing. Oh, that was too hard. It's like, well, what's too hard? I paying you full time for a part-time job.
I'm surprised she wasn't calling, just answering just to find out when her next paycheck was. But
Oh yeah.
I think we can learn a couple of things from this, and one of them is it's very dangerous to hire people in somebody's family or friends or associates, or
Mhm.
I've certainly hired someone else who was kin to somebody already working for me, and so it just weren't two relationships at the same time. And the other thing is, I don't believe we can leave people alone. I don't think that most people have a work ethic that pushes them into the responsibility. For some reason, television and programming has made a lot of young people think their whole goal is I want to be famous and have, 50 million people following me on something.
Mhm.
Um, Dan Kennedy just told me about a new book, which I'm getting ready to order. It's in the title is something like Dying to be Famous. And he was telling me how this book was written by a person in the UK talking about social media and
Mhm.
how all these people who had these massive followings on social media actually didn't weren't making any money.
Mhm.
It was all pretend, it was all fluff, it was all for the camera. I have a very good friend who is a really big mentor to women, and she told me that confidentially, a lot of these women who spend their whole time on TikTok and Instagram and a lot of these social things, and they're renting the cars.
Mhm.
They are going to other people's houses or hotels to shoot things to make it look like that is theirs. They're just faking it.
Oh yeah.
And since you know me so well, you know that not only do I look at things from a surface
Mhm.
perspective, I always look at the deep down thing of, when you fake things, there's a part of you that feels like a fake.
Oh
And,
yeah.
and energetically, people sense that.
You bet.
And I happen to be one of my favorite old shows in life is NYPD. Remember that show?
Mhm. Yeah.
back in the day, and these people were real people. I mean, they
Mhm.
took no guff from anybody. And there was a cop in the show who had doubted himself. He was a young cop and shot someone who
Mhm.
didn't have a gun. Now, he didn't kill the guy, but the detectives said to him, "You stink fear. You smell it." And believe me, the perps can
Mhm.
smell your fear before anybody else. They are instinctive about smelling it. And I think it's important for all of us today to instinctively tune in when we're getting ready to work with someone or hire someone. Are you really the real deal, or am I getting, the fake, you know, facade of you? And now that I do that, I'm not making as many, I'm not gonna say I'm on 100%,
Mhm.
thing, but I'm not making as many mistakes, that I'm really, asking enough questions now. By the way, I never follow the question thing. You're supposed to do them. I just answer whatever the hell I want in a way that, I can,
Mhm.
because, we don't like to follow rules. But I'm really drilling down and asking how they, some of their beliefs, and what's their opinion on this,
Mhm.
without sharing mine, just to get a little deeper understanding. Because if someone has the opinion that, you I have to call you the certain pronoun, that is never going to happen in my office. I have made it a point so far in my life not to do that once, not planning on doing that. I just don't play these games. And I think when we start to buckle a little bit and bend to this kind of insane reality, we all get in trouble. We hire the wrong people. Um, so anyway, we're off on a little tangent, but that's the fun of doing this.
Yeah, you buried three things in there, and let me go back to them. On the pronoun thing, one of my best friends, I've worked with him on his business for many, many, many years, and we met for lunch, and I said, I was looking at your LinkedIn profile, get rid of that stupid pronoun shit out of your profile, and he ignored me, as happens with free advice, and then we
Well said.
then we met probably a month later, and I said that crap is still in your bio. He goes, well, all the big companies I was working with are doing that. I was like, that's because the idiot in HR that they're getting ready to fire was telling them they had to do that. But you're not getting any points with anybody for that. A very very small number of people. Uh, and it really is. I think what you identified online right now is the best currency today is authenticity, right? So you see all of these people doing all this stuff online, but number one podcast in the world right now is the Joe Rogan Experience. And if you've ever watched any of his conversations, it's about as authentic as you can, and they're fact checking themselves, as they go, and they're just having a long and real conversation with sometimes salty language. But that's what people are drawn to, right? Is you do see the flash in the pans. I made a mistake of watching the Grammys, and I actually put out two emails on it. The first one was, "Oh my God, I hate this," and the second one was, "Wait a minute, okay, I missed Tracy Chapman and I missed the Billy Joel, and so parts of it I liked, but that's a perfect example of, look at all the young performers that are totally inauthentic, in that environment." And I think the thing about the online environment right now, especially if you're in a coaching, consulting, a role like that, or even if you're in a role where people are looking to you individually to build trust, it's that level of authenticity that people are attracted to, and the plastic facade is repelling people.
And often I don't think they actually know why they feel attracted or they feel repelled, but the brain warping, programming that everybody is receiving at such young ages,
Yeah,
um, it concerns me.
yeah,
I just saw on, one of the news, like American kind of good news kind of thing that some woman who ran a kindergarten, wanted America. She hated America and wanted it to fail. And I'm asking myself, who would actually put their child, if they knew this, in an environment that destroys their own child's future, that you want America to fail? As a former photographer who traveled all over the world for 6 straight years in some really scary places, I saw things that you would never want to live like that. You would never want to be that powerless and that
Mhm.
afraid every day. And people are so naive that they follow trends without actually looking at the impact
Mhm.
of how is that going to affect not only you, but your children, your future, where you're living, the quality of how you're living. And I always invite these people, have you been to a communist country? Because I have. You need to go there and move there as soon as possible if this is how you want to live. Because it's slim pickings, to get anything, of a quality life where someone else is completely controlling you.
Mhm.
Now, I know you and our greatest values is freedom.
Mhm.
I want to be free. And
Yeah.
I do not like any of these external circumstances trying to control my life or my business. Me personally, how I live. Can I have a gas stove?
Mhm.
These insane things. And since we're going to, break all my rules and not be evergreen, the Taylor Swift thing, flying, I forgot the number of gallons it was to visit the boyfriend, but it was like 300,000 something or another, outrageous private jet gallons to just go visit someone. But us, we shouldn't have a gas stove, and we should be in 15-minute cities, and this complete bullshit of that climate control. I live on the Atlantic Ocean and the
Yeah.
Chesapeake Bay. I have lived here over 28 years. I know exactly how far my house is to the waterfront. It has
Mhm.
not changed in the 28 years that I've been here. It is exactly the same. The farm that I grew up on, which we still own, which is surrounded by water, has exactly the same watermarks as it had when I was a child, because we marked things.
Mhm.
Dad, as a rancher and a farmer, because he didn't want the cows and the horses to get in the water. So I have, I'm very vocal about it, and which makes you extremely, you know, not popular. But, it's just one of these things. If we don't start speaking up a lot more
Mhm.
and telling the truth about, and I don't have to go into a conversation and say, I completely disagree with you. I find the better way, and you are very good at this, is, well, explain to me about,
Mhm.
asking questions
Yeah.
and watching them have no real answers as they parrot back
Mhm.
some news or celebrity, God forbid,
Yeah.
opinion on things.
I think there's hope on the horizon when it comes to that. And the hope on the horizon is the whole online podcasting world, all of the online media. And, thank God that Musk bought Twitter, because, even if YouTube wants to censor a thing, you can probably count on Rumble and Living Social, what is it?
Truth Social.
Yeah, I was thinking of Ruben's deal, but Rumble, X, and so forth. I think we're going to be in a censorship environment in enough areas that the truth will come out, and we'll see. I mean, but MSNBC, CNN, Fox, they're pale in comparison to just one Joe Rogan episode as an example, and there's all kinds of other examples. And you've got the right wing side on Ben Shapiro and and their gang. But the reality is voices that are authentic and voices that are willing to look at both sides of things are really are coming through right now. So there's an awful lot of people ignoring, what the cable news is saying, and an awful lot of ignoring the celebrities, and more celebrities willing to come out and say what they think rather than pander to their audience. So, we are going, I think, in the right direction. I mean, we shall see. We may end up with the complete dystopian future, in the near term, but it seems like we're coming back in the right direction.
Well, my dad, who was a very wise, complicated man, always used to say everything's a fad.
Yeah.
Everything is a fad. He said some fads last painfully a lot longer than you'd like them to, but eventually people sort of wake up to it. There's a change in the current, and
Hmm.
that people have to start, starting to realize that, what I used to believe, I cannot really believe anymore. So
Yeah.
I've held on to that thought a lot. This too shall pass, he says.
Yeah.
This too. And it was pretty much talking about my teenage years.
Yeah.
This too shall pass. I could hear him telling that to my mother, who was like, "Oh, please God, grow up fast enough and move on out of here." As you can well imagine, I was quite the handful. I really tested them greatly. And I think the story that when I was in high school, they had all the teachers and the management got together a meeting about Lee Milteer because she was pretty uncontrollable, and they finally decided that the best thing they could do was put me in the library and make me a librarian assistant. And of course, that was the greatest thing that ever happened to
Oh
me
yeah.
because, man, I got books and I could order people around and nobody knew where I
Perfect.
was. I had passes, so I was just the happiest girl on earth, for the few days left till I would finally graduate,
Mhm.
because they were like, we really want you to graduate.
Yeah.
So, what is your view now on just again, let's go back to that original thing that politics is affecting business, and do you think business is affecting politics also?
I do, and there's a constant struggle between small and mid-sized businesses and the big corporate bureaucracies, right? So, you hear the terminology nowadays of, Wall Street and what Wall Street wants and so forth, but really the engine of the economy isn't Apple. It's all of the small businesses, all of the others, where most of the employment is happening, where most of the growth is happening, where most of the dynamicism, if you will, is happening, and including, I mean, look at Musk. I mean, Tesla and SpaceX are now really big companies, but they're not all that old. They're pretty much startups still, in the scheme of things. So I do think that businesses is affecting politics. It's just, is it going to be the big Wall Street end of the spectrum, or is it going to be the small businesses ground up? And I think what you look at is local politics tends to be driven by ground up. National politics right now tends to be dominated, top down. So it's getting that to meet in the middle. The push pull between states' rights and federal rights, the push pull between federalism and back and forth. That really is a push pull between the big companies. Is Google or GM going to be in control, or is it going to be really people who are out on the front lines, in the smaller communities? So I think there's a lot of push pull back and forth that way. As a hopefully you'll meet here in a couple of weeks. My friend Hun Cao, who's running for Senate there in Virginia. He sees this. So we talk about this back and forth, and it really is a push pull between too much federal control versus local control, and where it's going to end.
So, yes, that is so well said. If your crystal ball was working and
Hmm.
you could just give us an insight of, what do you think is going to happen in the next few years?
Well, it's going to be interesting. We have the evolution of AI, and I imagine it'll be, it's kind of at the hockey stick growth curve, but I imagine the actual impact will be slower than a lot of people are prognosticating. If you look at self-driving cars, which is ultimately AI meets the real world, that's been a lot slower process than, we've been promised self-driving cars for what now, 10 years, and they're still more or less on the drawing board. Now, frankly, most of that is local politics getting in the way, right? Most of that is not making it legal as opposed to it not working well. That Elon Musk bio, by the way, was really interesting. That was one of the observations is Musk's comparison for self-driving cars was 40,000 people kill themselves driving themselves. So if you can cut that down by 75%, by 80%, everybody should be happy. And didn't realize the bar was going to be zero, right? The regulators were going to expect perfection. And it's a really interesting observation, right? Most deaths happen because people are driving drunk or they're driving in some other careless fashion. And so the self-driving revolution would eliminate most of that stuff. On the other hand, technology isn't perfect. So, where are you going to go with that? So I think the AI thing is going to be interesting. I do think that poorly educated and or stupid people are going to be regulated to manual labor roles. And on the other hand, you mentioned the lady who was trained as a lawyer. Lawyers are going to have a hard time because AI is going to replace 90% of what legal firms do is pushing paper and redrafting agreements and so forth, and AI can do all of that stuff, right? So there's going to be some really interesting upheavals. I've seen all the way down to newscasters. You can have the news written by AI. You can have the avatar pretty quickly indistinguishable from a human reading the news that was written by AI. So there's a lot of industries where it's going to have a huge impact. I don't think what you do, what I do. I don't think that with the financial advisors, I think the mediocre majority are in big trouble in that field. Is if you're a specialist, if you work in a niche, you're an expert in a particular industry, in a particular situation, and you distinguish yourself and you stand out in that way, they're gonna be fine. But the mediocre majority, and most of these guys are having a contest to be no different than anybody else. I think they're going to be screwed. They're going to be out of a job pretty quickly. It's already a business that has like 90% of people who go into it fail because they have no marketing skills. Um, but then the ones who are just the same as everybody else, well, why not let AI do that stuff for you?
Yes, I have a few copywriter friends,
Hmm.
and they've been a little concerned. And I keep
Hmm.
saying, well, here's the thing. Um, we played with AI just to like I had, write something about Lee Milteer Inc. and it
Hmm.
called us a financial institution
Hmm.
because we had millionaire smarts in there.
Yeah.
And I said, I want that to be an excuse to you to understand that maybe you could use it as sort of a cheat sheet kind of thing
Hmm.
and a help, an enhancement, or give you some fancy words that you might not have used before. But ultimately, smart people can really tell the difference between something that is AI written. At
Hmm.
least I'm believing that I am discerning a lot of AI stuff. It's for one thing too long, and I think it's great with making lists, but like all tools, you know, the exceptional people will use them well and the rest will fail.
Yeah. 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 It is interesting. I mean, we're both in an economy where we can't get enough workers.
Right.
And all of the developing Western countries have a too low of fertility rate. So the reason we need immigration is there's not enough babies. You're seeing, people get married at a lot older age. Women are choosing not to have kids. They've been, kind of brainwashed on the girl boss thing rather than, really taking care of that side. So it is going to be interesting because China is already coming up on a huge demographic plunge. The one child policies and if you have whatever the ratio is, 5 males for every 1 female, you have a population problem going. So it's going to be interesting. I mean, the biggest problem our economy has right now is we can't hire enough quality people to keep the wheels turning. So that's an interesting problem. And on the other side, I think you're going to learn that if you're mediocre, you're screwed, right? You've got to become excellent at something and stand out. Again, Lee, with the copywriters, you and I know for every 20 copywriters you find on WeWork or Fiverr or something like that, you have the occasional Dan Kennedy, Gary Halbert, or so forth. And then you have the people who are in the top 1% who really kind of stand out, John Carlton and people like that. But after that, there are people who are, I better be able to pay them cheaper than my hourly rate because I could do a better job. They're just going to get it done for me. That's the stuff that AI can do, right? I could go to ChatGPT and have it get the 10-page letter started for me, and then
Yes,
I could go make it interesting.
yes,
So you're not going to need the mediocre ones.
yes. I think graphic artists are going to
Yeah.
be very, I actually think they're going to be more affected than the copywriters, or at
Yeah.
least, sooner, because if you can just say, I want a picture of Lee Milteer, and all of a sudden this fabulous picture comes up
Mhm.
that we used on the first try,
Yeah.
I suddenly said, wow, okay. All you graphic designers need to have some other accomplished things that you can do.
Yeah.
Um, so what would be your advice today on people who are getting out of, let's just say, mainstream, the big box kind of world and want to be entrepreneurs? I don't know if we have these people watching us today, but there's not the training that I see for how to be entrepreneurs seems very corporate.
Yeah.
And I even worked for a corporation who was very corporate, who taught entrepreneurs. And behind the curtains, there was a lot of fighting going on
Mhm.
between people like myself and the corporate people about, well, we're training entrepreneurs. And I'm saying, you've never been an entrepreneur a minute of your life.
Mhm.
I mean, seriously, you're telling me, since I've been an entrepreneur since, 12, literally,
Yeah.
how we should be teaching entrepreneurs. So you have any thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, a lot. As you know, I had my toe dipped in the franchising side for many years, and the prototypical target for many of the franchises was upper middle management, big corporation, somebody who was willing to buy a self-employment opportunity. And if I was going to summarize it, they're willing to spend $120,000 to work twice as hard, making the same money as they were making at their corporate gig. Um, and the failure rate among those people coming out as middle management, even when they buy something as solid as, say, a McDonald's, super high, right? Now, the franchise industry will tell you that the turnover rate is maybe 5%, and you're in business for yourself, but not by yourself, and all that stuff. But the reality is that there's whole ecosystems in the big franchisors of people who do turnarounds. So they buy the franchise from the failing middle manager, turn it around, spin it up, sell it to somebody else, and then when it fails again, they buy it, turn it up, sell it again. There's whole ecosystems in the big franchises that do that, and the reason why is these people come into the business and think their job is to unlock the door, follow the guidebook on how to make the cookies or how to flip the burgers or whatever it is, and that's all they do. And the so in my case over the years, anytime I hired somebody from corporate America, they were almost always a disaster, right? They wanted to know about the benefits and when do I clock in and when do I clock out and how is all that working. And we were having the conversation of, you're responsible for the top line and the bottom line results of this business, and we need X amount of new clients coming in a month, and here's the role. And they just don't learn how to think that way in most of those environments. And there are exceptions, I mean, I think Apple has done a pretty good job, but they're probably not going to spit out most of those people. A taskmaster like Elon Musk or like um, um, uh, Steve Jobs, maybe Tim Cook now even, but taskmasters like that do a pretty good job on developing people. But I would say if you want to step back and the number one skill when I was at Georgetown running the martial arts school, I very quickly realized that they had taught me how to do the sales. They had taught me how to do the service fulfillment, which in this case was teaching martial arts. Uh, but I didn't know how the marketing worked because they were feeding all of the traffic in by the telephone, right? And so I very quickly realized, well, I know how to do these pieces, but I don't know how to do that. And seems like that might be the most important piece of the business. So, back then it was I went and took courses with the SBA, which were almost always horrible because mostly they're run by people in Safeway or big companies. Um, but I also went and, read books. I ended up reading all the old classic direct response marketing books almost by accident because I'd go to the Library of Congress at the time and find the books. But I realized pretty quickly the thing I didn't know how to do was marketing. Then I had an opportunity, by the way, it was a really valuable one. One of the staff member there went and opened his own business, wanted me to come work for him, and I said, "Well, okay, but if I'm going to do that, I need to learn how to do a startup." So I get access to the books, I get to go through the filing cabinet, I get to look at everything, and the problem is they were horrible at marketing. They hadn't figured out what I had already figured out is they didn't know how to do it, and so they failed. But it was a really good experience in figuring out what not to do, right? The funny story about that one, you remember, I don't know if you ever met first wife Becky. She was 5'2", blonde, chesty. But I
See a
did,
picture of her once. Yes, she was
yeah,
beautiful.
yes. But I did a bunch of ads for these guys, literally in the basement of my condo in Falls Church, Virginia. And I did pictures and I was bringing her up because she was the model. So I had her doing different poses, put her in uniform. And I put together probably 5 ads for them to use, never could get them to use. And then when I came to Denver, I must have enrolled 4,000 people using the marketing I put together for them that they wouldn't use. And it was a really interesting experience. But the number one thing to always learn, and this is true whether you're running an existing business in an up or down economy or whether you're doing a startup, is if you don't have the marketing right, nothing else matters, right? I can fix everything else if I have enough new prospect flow. I can fix the sales process. I can fix everything else. But if I don't have enough new people coming in the door, doesn't matter how good your restaurant is, doesn't matter how great your martial arts are, doesn't matter how great a financial advisor you are, all you do is sit there and die.
Yes. And it's a hard sale
Yeah.
because people don't want to believe that. I'm sure you can relate to this because you've written, 8+ books, but a lot of my clients, hire me as a one-on-one,
Mhm.
coaching person to help them get a book out.
Mhm.
And I can certainly help you do that. And I always say to them, writing the book is the easy damn part.
Oh yeah.
I mean, because, someone else can edit it for you and then, and you can look at the pretty pictures for the cover and all that kind of stuff, but you can't focus on that. You really got to focus on how, not just how you sell a book, but how do you sell thousands of books?
Hmm.
And they all have this sad perspective that if I just get the book out, it's going to make me. And I think musicians are sort of like that, when they used to call them records
Yeah.
or albums.
Yeah.
People have this very naive belief that if I can just create the thing will launch into the world and people will be attracted to it and the genie will be out of the bottle and I will be in demand and make money. And I'm going, it just doesn't work that way.
Yeah. No.
I don't know how many books are on Amazon right now. Last I heard it was over 6 million, but that was
Hmm.
several years ago. So
Yeah.
we would guess now probably what, 8 million?
Well, the number I heard, and it is probably a couple years old at this point, was that 1 million new books were coming online every year.
Okay, so that makes complete sense. And we also know that if you launch a book, And you and I know how to launch a book. We have resources. We're like the Godfather. We do favors. We collect favors.
Yeah.
We get people to help us, but that doesn't mean that momentum stays there. I've seen people's book, be bestseller on one day and then number 5,862 the next, in the next
Mhm.
week, and it's completely dead on arrival.
Yeah.
So
By the way, I stand corrected. According to Google, 4 million new book titles each year.
4 million.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's not intimidating at all, is it? Does it say how many books are actually on Amazon right now?
I didn't ask it that question. I could probably, it would probably tell me. Uh, but
I know it's going to be a scary number.
yeah, yeah. It probably doesn't know how, including self-published, but there's a lot. Um, Books in print. Uh, yeah, I'm not going to figure that out quickly.
That's all right.
Yeah.
Well, we do know this, that books in print is also a different thing than books, the Kindle kind of thing.
Mhm.
Because some people,
Here's 158 million.
okay, I'm gonna write that down. That's for today, 158 million. All right, and then
Yeah, 158,464,880.
which
Um,
will change in 2 seconds.
yeah.
All right, well, this has been fun. I always love interviewing you. Tell everybody where they can follow you and how, if they, where they can get your latest book.
Yeah, well that's on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, all of the digital sites. But the website's advisorwealthmastery.com. For the martial arts side, it's martialartswealth.com. But that one they can get that one for free at advisorwealthmastery.com, or they can, go buy it at Amazon or Barnes and Noble or wherever.
And I do recommend people buy this book because talk about marketing skills. Stephen has extraordinary marketing skills, and he's not a let's say, college educated, told what to do, marketing skills. I'm in the trenches. We've had our ass kicked. We have to create business
Mhm.
kind of guy with marketing
Yeah,
skills. So, how to create an infinite stream of new clients on demand, because that really is the secret. It's not making it pretty. It's not having a logo. It's all about really attracting people to something that is
yeah.
authentic. So please,
The
folks.
the the number I tell people is when I was running the schools, I had to have 120 new clients every month. So our benchmark was 120 every month. It doesn't matter what month it was, all the way around. I think the best month was 686 or something like that in one month, but it was that constant pressure.
Yes, and that is something about being an entrepreneur. That pressure never ends,
Yeah,
is with you all the time. I mean, we wake up with that energy in the day, and no matter where you are and what you're doing, it's pretty much it completely surrounds you.
yeah, yeah,
It imbues everything that you do and everything you think and everything that you sort of partake in. All right,
yeah.
well, folks, Stephen, thank you so much. We appreciate it. So folks, don't forget you can get a free gift from me, 5typesofenergy.com, or you can go to milteer.com and you can see some of the materials that I offer on inspiration and human development and things like that. So we're going to call it a wrap. And Stephen, thank you so much. And we will do this again and have fun.
I'm sure we will. Thank you, Lee.
Thank you.